cloudy. Joining us now, State Senator Scott Surovell, Northern Virginia. Scott also represents Carly Fiorina in his district, but he can't knock on her door because he can't get in her gate. Someday, Carly will let him in, and she'll be able to talk to her state senator. But right now, Surovell locked out of the Fiorina complex. Scott, great to have you with us, sir.
Thanks, John. That was quite a bit of hazing in your weather report and everything else, so appreciate that. And yes, Carly has not let me in yet.
Carly, I'm going to text her. I've texted her before. I was like, let your state senator in your complex, right? I mean, you got all the cameras. I mean, if nothing else, just set up a camera Facebook event where he can be at your gate talking to you, and even though you won't let him in, I mean, he's not going to bite. He's your state senator. He rings the bell, and you see him on the screen on your big complex with all your walls up and everything, and he can't get in. He wants to meet you. He's trying to do constituent service. I mean, it's just.
No, I sent her two notes, and she never responded, and I don't know what to do.
It's just. I mean, you're such a good state senator. Just all you want to do is give good constituent service, and you can't get in the Fiorina complex. It's just wrong. Some things in life, Scott, are just wrong. Now, here's my first question. Has Bill Stanley reached out to you? Because I just told him, he's not going to get anything done without going through Scott Surovell first. So has he reached out? He sent you a card or something?
No, I haven't heard from Bill in a while. But Bill's a good friend. He and I have worked together on a lot of stuff through the years. But I do demand a certain measure of respect.
Yes. I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, you're going to be in charge. You guys are about to take over. And, I'm just trying to help my friends like Bill, send Scott a nice card because Bill likes to pass stuff, right? He's always got, every time I talk to him and Krause are cooking up some kind of legislation or something, but like it's all dead in the water without going through your office. Look, I'm just the purveyor here of love. That's all. I'm just trying to get everybody together, right? Get everybody friendly.
You're the ombudsman. Right.
I'm the ombudsman of love. No question about it. Okay, we're going to get to some issues in a second, but I got a bizarre press release from, first it came from Obenshain, Mark Obenshain, your colleague in Harrisonburg. This is pretty bizarre. And then I also got it from Jeff Ryer, who is Tommy Norman's chief of staff, even though he goes by some other title. Jeff Ryer basically is in charge of the Republican caucus, everybody's reelection. He doles out the money, and he's basically the guy. So he sends this press release out, and he's a senator, right, for the Senate, Republican Senate, chastising the House Democrats and Caucus of the Corn for not holding a hearing to give the women accusers of Justin Fairfax their due and also give Justin Fairfax due process. So I had to read this thing 3 times. I've asked them all to come on. They've all turned me down. But I read this. I thought it was bizarre because I'm thinking to myself, if Kirk Cox wanted to hold a hearing, he could do it today. He doesn't need Eileen Fillicorn. He doesn't need Debbie Rodman. He doesn't need Schuyler, whatever his name is. He doesn't need any of these people. All he has to do is say, I'm going to hold a hearing. And if the Democrats show up, fine. If they don't, they don't. Morrissey, Joe, he's coming in the Senate. He's already said he'll cross-examine. He'll donate his services for that. So what was the purpose of this press release?
It's a good question. I mean, the idea that, a couple House freshman delegates are the big impediment to getting a hearing going is two freshmen in the minority, or the impediment to hearings is kind of preposterous. And it's also, what really scratched my head about it is it's totally inconsistent with where the majority leader, Tommy Norman, has been on this. I mean, when he's been asked every time, his position has been, I'm a potential juror. I have no comment. We have no role in this. The House of Delegates has to do with whatever they're going to do, and then we'll deal with something if they send it to us. But I'm not commenting because I'm a potential juror. And their whole caucus pretty much has been silent about this. And so, for their caucus to all of a sudden speak out 50 days before an election is kind of unusual. and it also just doesn't make any sense logically. But beyond that, I mean, the only thing I can read into it is that when you couple what they say in the release with the Washington Post editorial yesterday, they're just trying to create a press headline, getting somebody to write about it so that they can stick it in a mail piece and try and weaponize it to make it look more legitimate.
All right, so
but it's
Fairfax launched a lawsuit, which he's got every right to do. He's not had due process. I have not called for him to resign, as you know, and I don't think he should. And I think he deserves due process, just like Judge Kavanaugh did, or if something were to happen to Scott Surovell, Scott does. I mean, everybody deserves it. He hasn't had it. So I don't think he's got any need to resign. He launches a lawsuit. That's within his right. He's suing CBS for $400 million. Morrissey says it's got legs. I'm not a lawyer. I have no earthly idea. But then this press release comes out. But here's my question. If the Republicans wanted to give the women their opportunity to tell their story and hold a hearing, why do they need the minority? Can't they just say, I'm going to do it on September 15th at 8 a.m.? And don't they have the authority to do that? And they can invite the Democrats, and if they don't feel like being there, they don't show up.
Yep. They absolutely have that right. I'm not even sure Rob Bell needs the Speaker's blessing for it, although he'd probably be pretty wise to get it. But committee chairs have a lot of authority to call hearings whenever they would like to outside of session under the rules, and we do it all the time. So they don't need any bipartisan blessing of anything like that.
So if the Republicans can just hold the hearings and they don't need Eileen's blessing, the minority leader or caucus of the corn or any of the people.
Or Deborah Rodman or Sean Bell.
They don't need, well, I mean, who was it? Bell, Rodman, Cheryl Turpin in Virginia Beach. They don't need any of them. Just go ahead and have the hearing. Invite them. And if they don't show, look, you can have a special session day. Doesn't mean everybody has to show up. What's her name? That Joe Morrissey beat in Petersburg, Roz Dance bailed the last time you guys had a special session. She didn't show up. Don't show up.
Well, it's technically not a special session day. It's just we have committee hearings outside of session all the time, whether we're in special or not. It's just a committee hearing.
So they have the right to do that, and so I didn't really understand what the press release was about, and so I guess the light that you're shedding on it is. It's just something that they can put inside a mailer. Is that basically it?
Yeah, trying to generate a headline. If you get a newspaper to write a story about it, then all of a sudden you can put it on a mail piece and it looks more legitimate because you cite the newspaper or the news source or whatever that reported it instead of it just coming out of your partisan press release.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Democratic State Senator in leadership, Scott Surovell. Scott, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the Senate race. I see no math right now where the Republicans maintain a majority. They're way behind in the Dick Black seat. Bell is going to win that. Every internal poll that Democrats have shared with me, Sturtevant is down by anywhere from 7 to 12. I really don't see him winning that seat. The Virginia Beach seat is open. That's at risk. Siobhan Donovan is tied. I mean, you guys could end up 2020 at worst, maybe 22-18 at best. How do things look?
I mean, I think overall things look very good for our caucus. Both if you just look at where the polls are, I'm not going to get into that, but just in terms of, it's pretty clear that all the money seems to also be betting on us. I think we have some excellent candidates we've recruited. The Bell seat was sort of poised to flip. There's, I think, been about 40,000 new people, about 25,000 new voters that have moved in there just in like the last 6 or 7 years, according to VPAP, just through population growth. It's not even like voters changing from Democrat to Republican. Just a whole bunch of new people have moved into that Senate district to flip it. The Richmond seat sort of slipped away from us 4 years ago. We only lost it, I think, by 1,600 votes. And there was a big surge that came out of Powhatan County because of a sheriff's race. And the electoral dynamics are just totally different this year. Democratic voters are all extremely motivated given what's going on nationally. That seat's going to wake up. I think Tim Kaine won it by 22,000 votes. Ralph Northam won it by, I want to say, 18,000, maybe 16,000 votes. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that one, I think we're pretty feeling good about that. And then the other ones you mentioned, the open seats are always easier to flip. And with Frank Wagner's retirement, that one's a real opportunity. And you're right, the Donovan and the Turpin, the Donovan and the D-Steph races. We have Missy Smazel against D-Steph. She's a ice cream shop owner, former naval captain, PTA activist, excellent candidate. And then we've got Deborah Rodman, who just blew it out in her fundraising the last 60 days against Sean Donovan, raised $408,000 in 60 days. And Deborah has been surprising everybody with her. Every finance report is just really impressive. She seems to have a lot of depth in her district, and we're really optimistic about that. But John, I always, us Democrats are still, we look at polls, and every time we look at them and we see one that we're ahead, we think of Hillary Clinton. So, you got
to run the election. But if you look at the money that's come in and the new financial reports that came out, the Democrats have done surprisingly well, shockingly well. And like you said, people are making bets. But what surprised me was a lot of the Democrats raising, of course, outside state money, but they were beating the Republicans in local money. Somebody gives $25 or $100, they have a stake in the campaign. They give $50, they have a stake in it. Trump taught us that, right? He always said a $10 donor is really better than a $100,000 donor, because that $10 donor is going to put a sign up, or they're going to make one if they can't get one, and they're going to tell all their friends, and they're vested in my campaign. And he taught us that.
That's right.
And so,
listen, I've always been one of the leaders in the Senate, actually, in small donations. I've really always focused on it because I really believe it helps show your grassroots depth and support. Once somebody writes you a check, you know that they're supporting you probably for the long haul within your district. And a lot of my colleagues just don't do that, and I've never understood why. They tend to rely more on Richmond support. But you go look at my reports, I always have a very healthy quotient of small donors, and all these new people that are running, all of them have big time small donor numbers on their reports, because that's a lot of these new folks that are coming in are much more grassroots oriented, and they've come through the Indivisibles or at least Facebook, Justice Democrats, things like that, and that's where they get a lot of their support.
Scott, speaking of money, I want to get to the Michael Bill, Sonia Smith fiasco that's going on right now. This couple is giving out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 checks to Senate and House members. But in order to get their money, Scott, you have to sign a pledge. And the pledge is, A, you're not going to take money from Dominion Power. And B, you're going to sign on to their, whatever it is, Clean Virginia thing. So if you have to sign a pledge to get a $50,000 check, isn't that a quid pro quo?
I've always been uncomfortable. Well, first of all, I've never signed pledges, period. I've never pledged anything. And so when they originally came out with this, I think it was about a year and a half ago, it was pretty explicit that you had to commit not to receive Dominion money or something to get a check or something like that. And there was actually some reporting on it back then where that question was asked. And subsequent to that, I think they tried to modify it a bit or something to make it a little less clear. But from my perspective, you can never talk about, if you give me a check, I will do anything. I mean, that really gets into really questionable legal territory anytime you do that. And so even if it doesn't relate to a vote or not taking a vote or whatever, the Hobbs Act, the federal act that they got Bob McDonnell on, is very clear. Money for a vote or not taking a vote, that's an official act. There's no question about that. But from my point of view, if money is going to affect, if you're going to take money and do something, that's just that crosses a line. So I have not signed that pledge. If Dominion, I've taken Dominion money. If Dominion sends it to me, I still take it. It doesn't affect how I vote. I tell people, if you don't like how, if you're worried about it, go look at my record. I vote against Dominion more times than I voted for them. I just made them, I just passed a law that made them do a $3 billion coal ash cleanup that was had stronger rules in it than the EPA required. I mean, did it affect my action there? Take a look. But it's definitely, it's definitely a thing going on within our party right now. Is a lot of people are struggling with the whole Dominion money thing.
Well, but then you get back to what you said is you wouldn't sign a pledge to get Dark Money Michael Bill's money or his wife Sonia Smith, because in your mind that would be a quid pro quo, right? That's why you wouldn't sign it.
That's partly where I come. Yeah, partly that's one of my reasons. I have many others, and just that I don't like the idea of taking hard and fast pledges, because the world is not that simple, and there's complexities that get thrown at you, and it's hard to foresee everything that's going to happen. As soon as you start taking pledges, you tie your hands if you want to be intellectually consistent. And with the whole Dominion thing, I guess the premise underlying it is that because we have some role in how Dominion earns money and makes profit, that we should, for some reason, then therefore not take their money. But I mean, that's true of virtually every industry in Virginia. I mean, technically, I practice law. The practice of law is governed by the state. Mm-hmm. Am I not supposed to take money from lawyers? I mean, mm-hmm. That's not, just about every single industry is regulated in some sense by the state. I mean, Dominion obviously much more because of the State Corporation Commission. It's a regulated monopoly. There's a zillion other monopolies that are regulated by the state too. Every water authority, every gas company, mm-hmm. It's just I'm not I'm just not into pledges. It's not there. And by the way, the no new taxes pledge, I think that one has caused so much destruction in this country that because of the doctrinaire, way that most people treated that for about 15 years. So
I'm not in favor. I mean, I agree with you on that. I'm not in favor of that. The difference with that, with a no taxes pledge, and those that ran that group in Washington, is money was not exchanged hands. That was basically from the National Taxpayers Union. You took that pledge in order to get a Republican constituent backing, and they get their endorsement. It's a lot different than taking a check. Okay, let's move on. I only got a couple minutes. I got a big question here. You guys are going to take over the Senate, no question in my mind. Last session, you passed 40-0, I believe, or maybe it was 39-1, the new bipartisan redistricting plan put forth by Brian Cannon and One Virginia, which is a brilliant plan. I'm a huge proponent of that. Passed the House 87-13. I think it passed the Senate 39-1 or 40-0, something like that. But if the Democrats take control, that's got to pass again to get on the ballot. If you're a majority in the Senate, are you going to vote for that bill like you did last time?
You really want to put me on the spot. First of all, it wasn't Brian Cannon's bill. Brian Cannon had a version of it, and or I should say, One Virginia, whatever their name is, they had a version of it. We did not pass everything they wanted us to in it, but it was relative. It was about 80% of what they wanted, something mm-hmm. like that. I had some questions about it when it passed. I still have some questions about it. There's some implementing legislation that has to go with it that we haven't sorted out yet. Mm-hmm. And it depends on how the implementing language works out. I also have some concerns about throwing it to the Supreme Court if either chamber vetoes a plan, because the Supreme Court has been largely picked by people that would not rather see me in office for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. So, I voted for it last time to keep the conversation going. But I think right now, if you were to take the vote today, it'd probably still pass like 30-10 or 35-5 or something. But the last vote's the one that matters. And I think once people start really looking at it, it's probably not going to be 40-0 next time, but it'll. Right now, I think the majority of my caucus supports it. George Parker, Creed Deeds, Monty Mason are real huge proponents of this.
Well, it's easy to vote for something, A, when it doesn't matter because it's got to pass 2 years in a row, 2 years consecutively. So the first vote doesn't matter. And secondly, it's easy to vote for redistricting when you're not in power. It's really easy to do. It's when you're and to the Republicans' benefit, they all passed it. They had the power. Same thing in the House, passed 87-13. It's going to be interesting to see if caucus of the corn takes over the House. And you got a lot of crazies in there, Scott, and let's just be honest. I mean, you got Levine running around, wants to take everybody's gun. You got Kathy Tran.